The workshop, I think most people have attended these events before, so you know the format. There's two questions on the screen here, and what we'd ask is that each table would appoint a chairperson and a rapporteur just to take notes and to report back at the end of the meeting on the main points of your discussion on these. There is a sheet on every table, and again, if people could use that to complete to take note of their discussions so that they can be collected. I don't think everybody can read the questions, I'm not going to read them out on your behalf. And so about 15 minutes for each question, and then at the end we'll go around and get feedback from everybody. Hello everybody, we're just going to now start to get the feedback from you all. I think the best way of doing it, rather than to avoid getting too much repetition, is that if we get the answers from one table, whether somebody wants to volunteer, or I will pick somebody, and then we just ask the other tables to add on to it with any additional points that they wish to raise. So we might do question one first and then question two. Sounds like John is popping champagne. Will I pick a table at random, or does somebody want to volunteer themselves? Okay, I'm now going to pick the tables. I'll pick table 5, there's a lot of you there, so it's been a very hard discussion. Well, thank you.
Okay, we'll go for question 1 then. There's fairly straightforward reasons and barriers for both SMEs and larger organisations. The initial costs and the non-productive elements for SMEs in particular. Reluctance from established staff in both SMEs and large organisations that they're stuck in their ways and reluctant to change. The trust in the software provider and the fear of putting a heavy investment within a third party, and making sure that that software will still be relevant after the investment. And the fact that there has been significant change in the contract forms recently, and reluctance to take on more and adopt more difference in work practices because of that. And within large organisations, the bureaucracy that's involved in actually making a business case and getting that business case implemented. So really there's a very straightforward solution to it. It's a dissolution of much sure it's making sure leadership roles are taken from the top down in both taking a business decision but also the implementation. How we get the message across, and the message is actually perceived to leadership, is making sure that at the likes of today that we directors and really policy decision makers at the likes of today, which would really highlight the benefits of it. Apart from that, there wasn't much other solutions for the calls, terms and implementations.
We hope the directors are all watching online, and maybe we can live in hope. That's very interesting that you say about the reluctance of staff to want to move to it and to get training on it. I mean, that actually, I haven't heard that before, and that is interesting that people would be reluctant to move to new technologies, but maybe that's for another day. I won't explore it. We move to the table behind there, table 6. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, we will concur with what Rowan there said, but I mean, just your point there, in terms of reluctance, we were kind of putting that down kind of a cultural reluctance. You know, it's the way they were doing it, this is the way the existing practices want change or reluctance to change. So it's not that they're afraid of education or learning more, but just that cultural. The cultural perception of the way we do it now is grand, and we'll continue on with that. So I think that's the point we say that.
Yeah. Table 7, do you want to add to that? Any points there?
Yeah, Catherine, I think, absolutely the willingness to change was, first number one at our table as well. But on top of that, there's the risk of investing too early and not getting any projects together to fund that investment. The initial cost is always one of, which I see as a red herring. It's actually the cost of not doing anything is the big issue. the expectation of immediate results, as you say, when directors make this decision, they want results straight away, but of course there is a bedding in period for the implementation. Ultimately, we're looking at, what happens if you train people and they leave? I suppose our attitude was, what happens if you don't train them and they stay?
So I would just go around the room, just
I suppose just the 2 points we really had was having sufficient workload within the industry to encourage the change, and also trust being a barrier to the industry as a whole. People's willingness to share information and collaborate, we felt was a big part of it as well.
Number 4.
We had a lot of similar points to the other tables, but possibly another one just maybe a lack of market demand for SMEs, maybe in terms of small projects, and would that investment be recouped in small projects? Possibly lack of awareness at senior level, but also maybe at client level to reap the benefits. And possibly one of the solutions, forums like today to promote it, but also getting people to focus on valuing their time. In terms of, say, for example, from a quantity surveying point of view, is to cut out a lot of the grunt work, a lot of the boring measurement, and place a value then on the higher level stuff.
I think so a lot of points have been kind of covered already this morning that we discussed. Maybe the only things that we could really add to it, we kind of saw that we across the world, the UK market, where there is a kind of a top-down push from government and better informed clients, as well as the consultants in the industry, pushing up that they're kind of meeting in the middle. And we kind of feel, I suppose, probably in Ireland at the moment, it's the kind of this push from the industry and consultants and people like yourselves in the room, and probably not as much of a kind of a top-down push from the government, as we kind of need better informed clients. But also, we were kind of discussing really at the very start of things, when people are being trained and professionals in industry, that there should be really a better understanding of how each other work, kind of beginning at kind of third level education, of this crossover, so that we do collaborate better when we do go into the working world.
Right. Ralph, do you want to add anything from our table, or have it all
I
covered?
think most of the points were covered. I was really interested to talk about the level of commitment to training. It's not something, we were discussing that at the table, that in the industry, it's not something that's usual. There's a sort of commitment to training in construction compared to other industries, say IT or whatever. But for a small practice of 15 people to have one dedicated person to training and a commitment to their staff was very impressive. So maybe that's a cultural change that needs to happen.
I was saying just very briefly, in the Institute we took on a qualified accountant a good number of years ago, and there was no question when she was coming on board that part of her contract was that her CPD would be paid for. It wasn't even a discussion point, it was just part of, I'm an accountant, you want me to be up to date, you want me to be compliant, I must have my CPD. And the same with the solicitor. And it's not the same, certainly in architectural practice, and I don't believe it is in QS or engineering practices, and that's the shift we have to make. It's another day's work. Okay, just on to question 2. Again, who would like to start? Back to maybe table 5. Go back, do the same. Are you happy to take that up?
And we dwelt on this question slightly less, but we came up with a couple of issues with the current forms of contracts. Obviously, the GCCs and design build, contractor designs and client design contracts were main thing. Design build contracts, we felt that because there's early collaboration between the design team and the contractor, and more than likely in a competitive market, that BIM can be seen to give a competitive edge for the client and the end user, and that was being promoted. And the fact that mechanical subcontractors have taken up the lead, that we can see that the post-contract it will become more commonplace, particularly with the larger mechanical contractors. So how that's going to drip feed and back up the design. From the services point of view, the design tools available with some of the BIM products are a bit hit and miss, plus or minus 20% in the analysis relative to using more standard softwares. So but these inaccuracies to do with the energy analysis, but also to do with the quantities which David had mentioned earlier on, mean that there's always going to be a scepticism for the use of BIM under the context of it forming part of the work to the contracts element. So that was really where the discussion came. So you can see it certainly being used in design build for competition and when pitches have been made with the early collaboration. But the collaboration pre-contract, it's always going to be used as a design tool, but less likely to be used as a work requirement element.
Thank you. Table 6.
I think we'll probably just do the approach on the statement of question 2. I think one of the things that we experienced here is that there's real obvious benefits if the whole design embrace a package. What we would find on a particular project where only part of the design was currently embracing, but there's a bit of a go back to things we know, which is obviously not beneficial for the whole team and not the whole project based on the BIM approach. I think there's also the cultural thing in Ireland in terms of mechanical services engineers. There seems to be still a reliance on a contractor on site to resolve the final designs, etc. So to the level of detail that we have to commit to at tender stage for a design team and specific structural architects, structural engineering architects, we have to design to a very, very detailed point to achieve good standard documents. We just don't see it maybe in the full spectrum of the design team that's achieved. So maybe that's embracing in terms of mechanics probably not to the same extent as some of the other design teams.
I guess we just talk in terms of the collaboration. The current forms of contract, it's not particularly catered for England. And in terms of who actually leads it, who's going to drive getting all the consultants to provide the information, does it fall back again to the standard, the architect to do this? I suppose in terms of collaboration, then have we built up the level of trust from a surveying perspective? We make quite a lot of assumptions at cost plan stage to just get used to the fact that actually the information that's there is enough to standard that the cost plan could actually be produced straight away. What kind of information are we still going to have to add to it?
We felt that the problem call document that is currently being developed is very much required in order to get teams to collaborate. So it spells out, I suppose, each member's responsibility under that collaboration, and that there's no grey areas for each member. And within that, obviously the role of the BIM manager in order to encourage and make sure that that collaboration works will be very important.
We felt that under the two different types of contracts, say the employer design contract, that the collaboration is really between the design team at the early stage, at pre-contract stage, and there's not really any barrier to that, let's say in terms of the form contract at the moment. But in terms of, say, design build contract, obviously you get early collaboration with the contractor, which is probably quite beneficial, and possibly maybe the larger contracts will go that way if it's becoming more efficient to work that way, to have the contractor at an early stage, if BIM is utilised more in those contracts.
Table 2.
Yeah, I suppose with the transcript, I think you've covered a lot of the points that we discussed already. I think we we would agree with the previous speaker that really under the current like GCC contracts, there's really stopping design teams using the BIM tools that are available, working in a level 2 BIM environment to collaborate and produce a better level of documentation and more coordinated information. We certainly see that kind of the single point of compliance and the emergence of more design and build contracts kind of driven by contractors do shift the role as the contractor really as the lead and kind of the cracking the whip and driving things. That does actually, I suppose, force consultants to coordinate and collaborate more. And certainly in the design and build environment, the integration of subcontractors very early in the process can also be very beneficial. Contractually, I suppose there's issues of ownership of models. Consultants can kind of worry about, I suppose, liability for errors in the models, sharing information with the contractor. If it was in a traditional, say GCC contract in procurement, and yeah, that's really fair.
Rob, do you want to add anything more to it?
One of the points was that David mentioned that they are achieving better collaboration anyway, understanding the contracts, just through better ways of working. So I thought that was interesting. We don't need new contracts to start. We probably need new contracts later on to optimize the use of them. And then we started discussing this sort of new emerging role and who's going to take up that role of coordinating the information. Yeah.